This podcast is for singers who have music in their soul and want to be in the spotlight. We are INVICTA Vox Radio.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of INVICTA Vox Radio. As always, we are your hosts, Mike and
Angie Lee.
Yeah, I tried to go like morning radio host there.
I think we did it.
Hey!
Hey, everybody. Welcome to 5 a.m.
Yeah, it's like, too early.
Everyone's like, no. No.
So what we're going to be talking about today is kind of an interesting dynamic, something that's very particular to being in a band or trying to manage the relationships within a band and how to operate and give a really good performance as a band.
Well, yeah, it's something where I think a lot of people get really hung up, right?
And
we've actually had a lot of people ask us about this too. And this isn't necessarily with your, like if you are an independent artist, but you're going to hire people to play for you, or you're going to do a one-off thing where you go play with another band, or if it's just your band. This will apply to you on any front. It's something that you really need to keep in mind whenever you're going to play with more musicians than yourself.
Yeah, and it's this concept of handing off the lead.
Yeah. Oh, it's like the most important thing in the whole world. We see so many young bands just really miss this, and they're like a hair's breadth away of being good to excellent, and it's because of this one thing.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different facets to this, right? Like band dynamics, I think, is one of the most complicated things because, again, you're dealing with people, you're dealing with egos. You want to give everybody a chance to shine, everybody a chance to really take the spotlight.
Yeah.
And that can be a little bit tricky, right? Because it seems like everybody wants the spotlight. Even the tambourine player just wants their moment.
The cowbell.
Yeah, where they'll just
ding,
jump
ding,
out there.
Ding, ding. And you're like, no, man.
Yeah, it's like,
unless you're Christopher Walken and you want some more cowbell.
Yeah, unless you got a fever. Then...
No, for real. And that's the hardest part, especially when you get a group of people in a room where all of them are insanely talented. And we see this the most with musicians who aren't as seasoned. You don't see this as much with people who are professional for hire musicians because they have been around the block. They know that their job is to go there and play their part and to, do their part. They get paid to do it. And so there's not really a lot of ego attached to what they do. Like if you hire a drummer to come play a show for you, he or she is going to come in and do their thing and do their best to make your show sound good and spotlight you, and then they're out.
Well, and
that's a very different scenario than if you're putting a band together and you have a drummer who's like maybe seriously the best drummer of all time, but he or she has a complete ego about it, and they want to make sure that their drums are heard above everything else. And they're not listening to the rest of the band. They're just playing drums. And that's a problem.
Yeah, and like you said, I think in the dynamic where I've hired someone, it's a very different dynamic when you've hired someone, because then they're there just to do a job.
Right.
Right. They recognize that it's your project. They're there just to play the guitar, the bass, drum, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And so it takes on... It's not necessarily the dynamic of a band where it's like, hey, we've put together a band and we're practicing and writing songs together and doing all this.
And producing,
where it's for hire, they come in there just to do one thing, and it's their part, right?
And if they don't do that, then you fire them.
Yeah, then you wouldn't hire them again.
No.
Right? So
they'd be like, cool, you're really great. All we heard was drums. Never again.
But one of the most important aspects to remember when you're playing in a band, when you're part of a group, is
handing off the lead.
Yeah, handing off the lead, but also that it's a team game. It's a team sport, right? And it's like if you watch, any sport, it's, again, always easier to see this in sports.
It's way easier to see in
but
sports.
Like in basketball or football, there's only one person with the ball in their hand at any one given point in time.
Right.
Right? It's not like everyone's like, we all have the ball and we're all shooting. It's like in that scenario.
Like 5 balls for each person on offense. You're like,
it's just straight chaos out there. But
that's dodgeball.
But you know what? Yeah, no doubt. But the funny thing is,
don't play dodgeball with your band, okay? Don't do dodgeball. We're doing basketball.
There's so many that play it that way.
They
though.
do. It sounds that's actually a great analogy when you go watch a band and it's just like pure chaos on stage, and it's not necessarily supposed to sound like pure chaos, and all you hear is just this wall of sound and you're not really sure what's going on. It's literally chaos of dodgeball, because every single person in the band is throwing a ball at the same time.
Right.
And it's just hitting you. And you're like, shoot, why is everyone aiming their ball at me?
Yeah.
Like, that's really what it sounds like. I
Or,
love that.
Or if you gave all 5 people on a basketball court a basketball and you're like, just shoot. And everyone's shooting and running back and forth. And you're like, I don't know what the hell's going on. And
the defense doesn't even know what to do. They're like, what? Who am I blocking? Who am I defending?
Yeah, that's exactly what a show sounds like, with bands who aren't willing to let one person take that lead, because it's just muddy. It's this wall of sound. I don't know what I'm listening to, but it is not good.
Yeah, so it's being the team player is knowing when to be a supporting role and when to be a leading role. And that's the same thing, like when they're passing the ball in basketball, the point guard's, the one bringing it down the court, and they're shooting, likely shooting, you have your shooting guard, and you're passing it to those people who have key moments of playtime, right? When you need them to play a specific role. And then you have your big guys, defending and doing all this stuff. So it's knowing where you're supposed to shine and what your role is in the band, and then being a team player to make the whole thing sound good. I think oftentimes musicians approach the band like they're amazing, and they probably are, but that they want to have their part heard, number one, all the time. And you see this all the time with bands. You'll go to a show, and it's almost like Battle of the Amps, right?
Yep. And you've been to this scenario before.
That's before with my band. It's awful for the singer because I can't turn my voice up anymore. And if the mic is peaking, they can't turn the mic up anymore either. And so the drummer is just like going at it. And it's like, dude, the drummer is the one that sets the tone. If your drummer plays super, super hard, make sure you know how to tone that person down. Because not to say that we need to diminish their talent, but if they're playing too loud, everyone else has to play as loud as them to make the mix sound good, and then the vocals are gone. And you can't have a vocalist trying to sing over a drum.
Right.
Like, it's not ever going to work.
Especially if you're in a coffee shop. You see, it's like you're in a small setting, small venue, and they're just ripping, and it's like, dude, all I
hear is cymbals.
Yeah. Yeah.
And bass. It's like...
Yeah, all I can hear is... I can feel the bass, and the cymbals are making my ears bleed.
Yeah.
So... That's where the true skill level of a band in a lot of ways is, can you create a good mix to create a good show?
Yeah, and it's knowing when certain people are supposed to shine, and then it's knowing your venues and knowing, you can't always control your sound system, right? And you can't control the sound person either. Unfortunately, there's even sound people who have sabotaged shows that I've played to make, because we'll be opening for bands, and they'll sabotage our sound to ensure that the band who's headlining sounds better. And that's terrible. And you should never do that. And shame on you if you're a sound person who does that. But it happens all the time. Barring all of those things that you can't control, here's what you can control. Let's scale it back again to this whole idea of handing off the lead. When you are putting your songs together, and say you've already written the song, or you're doing a cover, so you have a complete song you guys are now practicing and putting together. Let's simplify. Let's say it's a vocal, guitar, drums, and bass. So you just have 4 people in the band. We'll simplify it to that level. And we've already talked about the drummer. The drummer is such a key player in this whole thing because they hold the heartbeat of the entire band. What we often see is that every member of the band tries to lead the tempo of the song. And so this is the number one thing that you can start working on with your band immediately to get the sound tight and for your drummer to really understand what their role is. So drummers, you're the heartbeat. Your primary job is to hold that beat for the band. You are the metronome. And if you're a drummer that can't play to a metronome and stay on beat for an entire song, guess what you got to get to doing? You gotta play on beat, dude. Like you have to be a human metronome. And if you can't do that live, get a click in your ear for every single song live. The best drummers do it. There's no shame in that game. You are the heartbeat. this is not, the show is about the drummer show. Okay. The drummer is the life beat underneath everything. Okay. So make sure that you really take on that role and take it on seriously, that you're holding it all together. It's on you. If we lose the beat, it's on you. That being said, everyone else in the band, if you're a bass player, if you're a guitar player, if you're a singer, listen to the drums. Rely on the drums. I talk to bands about this all the time. They're like, oh, I couldn't hear myself on stage. That's why it didn't sound good. It's like, did you hear the drummer though? Can you hear the drummer? And the problem is people fall apart because they're trying to hear themselves instead of falling in line with the drummer. And if everybody just listens to the drummer, it doesn't matter if your monitors go out on stage, because if you can hear the drums, you can all be on beat together. Drummer, if you can hear the click, you can keep it down, right? And then it's like we said, for our drummers, if you're in a venue that's smaller, play for your venue. Pull back on how hard you're hitting. If you're a super, super heavy hitting drummer, you probably need to pull back all the time anyway, because it's not about you all the time. You're important. You're extremely important. But unless you have a drum solo, do not be hitting your hardest, because we can't hear anything else. And if you want it to always be about you, then go do drum competitions and stop playing in a band, because you have no business playing in a band if you can't play your part. Okay? So, and you can tell I take issue with this because I've had so many egos I've dealt with drummers. It's always a drummer.
Yeah.
Sorry for all the non-ego drummers out
Drummers and guitar players, probably in that order, tend to.
Yeah. Bass players are so chill. Bass players are chill.
Well, they're
the
like,
chillest, most awesome people.
I'll just chill and let these two fingers work my magic.
They're amazing. So it's always zeroing in on the drums, because you can always hear those drums. So drummers, get your click together, get your tempos together, make sure you're not overplaying. And if you have a drum solo, let it rip. And give your drummers drum solos, guys, so that they can have that access to be able to show everybody how killer they are. But here's the thing, if you're a killer drummer, everyone's going to know it whether you're playing loud or not. So show us how good you are with your skill and not your volume. Like, big time.
I think that's a huge piece of it. Right? It's more about skill than about volume. Don't worry. People can hear what's going on. And when you have your moment to shine, then step out, have that moment, be in the spotlight, do what you're going to do. And everybody will hear the part that you're playing. It's not like, unless the sound goes out, which we have seen that. We've seen people rock a whole solo, and it's like, I can't hear it because their guitar's completely gone out.
It's gone out.
But
with the drummer, too, like, I just lost my train of thought.
But barring that,
drummers, that's what I was going to say. Drummers, if you can't hear anything on stage and you can only hear your drums, don't worry, everyone's following you. Right? Hold it down. If you hold it down, no matter what happens on stage, everyone can hold it down with you. But if you lose it and you start playing louder, you're like, I can't hear anything, I'm going to play louder. Like, don't do that. Just hold it down, because most of the time when the stage goes out, we can still hear it in the house. And your audience can still hear it. I know that's such a bizarre thing, but if the monitors go down, if you have, whether you're stage monitors or in-ears, if they go down, we can still hear it in the house, and it's probably still a good blend out there. If it's not a good blend out there, then you see people in the audience start to do something about it because they can't hear it. So drummers, if you lose the mix, if you can't hear anything, just stick to that click. Hold your beat. Hopefully you've practiced your songs so many times and you've played so many shows that you play it the same every single time. Hold it down. Everyone else will follow you whether you hear them or not. Don't worry. It'll work. I promise.
Yeah. And the same's really true for everybody else, right? Not that everybody else is like, the drummer's kind of that heartbeat, like you said, they need to focus on their own thing.
Next is the bass player.
And then everybody else should just kind of be keyed in and honed in on that. But everybody's just got to play their part. Remember what your part is.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to stress a lot, right?
Well, we were going to talk about the dueling amps too.
Well, yeah, and I mean that happens, right? Where one person will turn up their amp. It's usually like guitar player, and then the bass player turns theirs up.
I can't hear myself.
Player turns theirs up.
Can't hear myself.
And so it just and it starts to muddy the mix, and
then the drummer starts playing louder.
And the sound guy's like, "Well, I can't do anything about this now. Everything's like beyond my control." So, and it really that will ruin the show as well, because one, you can't hear the singer, right? And you have to think about this. The singer, if we're going back to the basketball analogy, the singer is the point guard. The singer should have the ball the overwhelming majority of the time.
Yeah. Sorry for all the people who want to be the lead all the time, but guess what?
But that's the focal point of a show. That's the human connection. That's where most of the emotion is brought in, is from the singer. That doesn't mean that there's not great and awesome guitar parts, bass parts, all that
And you
stuff.
should have solos for those people, especially if you have really killer musicians.
Right. But there's a reason why that center spotlight is on the vocalist, okay? It's their job to perform, to draw the audience in, and if they aren't the focal point of the show the majority of the time, you are going to lose your audience.
You'll have like 10% that are like, oh my gosh, I'm here for just the guitarist. And then they'll love it. And everyone else will be like, wow, couldn't hear anything. And that's the frustrating part. And it's like what Mike just brought up. The vocalist is the human connection. That voice, that's the thing that people are going to hear. Not because they don't want to hear the rest of the band. They want to hear the whole thing. And they want to hear just this incredible presentation of the songs, the ebbs and flows. We want to have all the dynamics all the way through to just tell these stories and to really get people involved energetically. And obviously a singer can't do that without the band. Okay. Everyone plays a part. Everyone has a part to play here. But the singer is the human sound coming from the band. They are the voice is the human instrument. And again, that's where the strongest connection is going to come, to connecting the whole band to the audience. So you almost have to think of it as the singer's the conduit to bring people in. They're the mouthpiece of the band. Not necessarily most important as far as making the whole thing come together, because everyone has an integral part to play. So we're not downplaying your role if you're not the singer. But if we can't hear the singer, then we completely lose the bridge to the audience. And that's what you have to consider. So if you can't hear your amp or you can't hear the drums, just stay and play. Hold it down. Hold it down, hold it down, hold it down. Okay? Oh, and you'll always be able to hear the drums. Drummer, if you can't hear anything else. That's what I meant to say. And if there's a problem out in the house, the sound person will come up and fix it. If they can't hear you out there, they're going to come and fix it for you. But here's the thing. If you're a guitar player, if you're a bass player, if you're a drummer, you are not the human connection. Know your role. Know what you got to do to make this thing really, really fly so that you can support that voice and human connection to the audience. It's so unfair to assume that a vocalist can compete with a drum set. There will never be a day ever in history that a vocalist can compete organically with a drum set, or with a bass player, or with a guitarist. Our vocal cords are the size of a thumbnail. And they're powered by our air from our lungs. Like, that is never going to happen. And so anytime you guys throw out the mix, anytime you throw out the balance of what's going on in the house and with the sound system, that vocalist does not have control over their own amp, over their own instrument. They can't just crank up the gain on their guitar. Like, they have their voice and that's it. So we always have to be mindful of, can we hear the vocalist? Drummer, can we hear the vocalist? And if we can't, scale it back.
And
that's
I know
a really important thing to note.
Angie's going hard in the paint on drummers, but the same thing applies across.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just so
the
easy
board.
to hear
She's
the drummer.
Just so focused on the drums, but the same thing.
It's bass and guitar just as hard.
Right.
Or keyboard players too. I mean, come on. Let's get that keyboard in there. They're a little bit more funky, but
no keyboardist should be. They're like the kickers of the.
Well, not necessarily. It depends on the band.
I know. I'm just kidding. But a lot of times you see it from the guitar player too, because the guitar is holds down a melody line, right?
Well,
or they have these really cool riffs and hooks and all these things.
And they have lots of solos. They have lots of leading roles.
Right. And there's phenomenal guitarists out there. But just look at every like major successful band that's been out there. Look at U2. They have Bono and The Edge. Guns N' Roses. You got Axl and then you got Slash, right? But The Edge and Slash are not in the center spotlight. They have their moments.
And Bono will step aside when the Edge steps in. Right.
And they'll give them their moments. They'll give them their time to shine.
But they are epically good at handing off that lead.
Right. And those guitar players, great guitar players, know that they can step out and their skill will be heard. People who are there for the guitar player will hear the guitar through everything else because that's what they're paying attention to.
Yeah.
But for the crowd as a whole, they want to hear the full song with the singer leading the show.
Yeah.
So just always keep that in mind. Just because you're not in the center spotlight doesn't mean that your role is any less diminished, that people are going to think
it's just as
any
important.
less of you or see you any less as a badass or whatever it is in that situation. Everybody's going to be able to see your talent, your flow, and really appreciate what you do. But make sure that the song or that the show is focused on what the show should be focused on.
Well, and it's like, sorry.
Just that's what is going to draw the most fans to you, right? Because hearing songs creates fans, but live shows create real lifelong
super fans. Yeah. Yep. Wonderful. It's just about knowing what your role is.
Yeah, and just being willing to set the ego aside.
Yeah, everybody is just as important as the other person.
And be a team player. And if you're that singer, make sure that you guys open up opportunities for other people to shine.
Yeah.
Right? Take that moment where you step back and you look at the guitar player, and by doing so, you make the entire audience look at the guitar player, right? And you direct the attention there, or on the bass player, or you go back to the drums and you're just jamming out on the drums. Make sure that you are being that point guard and distributing the ball around to help draw attention to the other band members who've worked their butts off to be able to be as skilled as they are with their instruments.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is like, just keep in mind that volume doesn't mean skill. Volume does not mean skill. And actually, if you can't scale back your volume in the right situations, you actually look less skilled. So it's amplitude is just one of the many things that comes with music is like how loud and soft things are, right? So it's cool if you can play loud. It's even cooler if you can play it well, no matter which situation you're in. And I'm going hard on bands because I'm a singer and I've had to deal with this a lot, and it's really, really frustrating, but it can be. But the most beautiful thing that happens is when you guys get so dialed in that the lead is being handed off proportionately and everybody knows their role and everyone knows when to play that supporting role and when to come together as that team to just create something so special and so wonderful. And so just keep that in mind. That's the end goal, is how can we affect this audience? How can we give this emotion and this journey to this audience? How can we entertain them? How can we bring them into our world? How do we draw them in to make them super fans? How do we make them feel something? And if all you care about is your own instrument, whether you're the singer, the drummer, the bass player, the guitarist, and you think you're the most important thing going on the whole time on the stage, you're not going to be able to achieve that. Learn how to hand off the lead, learn how to be a team player, learn when, things are appropriate to come through and when they're not, and when you should be supporting. And if you can do that, it's also going to help out with your communication as a band as well, because then you're not fighting each other when you're on stage. And there will be a harmony that comes to the entire show, the entire performance, and really shine through. And really, you're not going to have to deal with this if you're hiring musicians, because usually they come in, they're pretty respectful, and they just play their part. But if you are playing with a band and you guys are trying to be a family and you're trying to do something special with it, just keep this in mind. Put your egos aside and really take a look at what the overall picture is that you're trying to create, so that you can do that together and everyone can play their part instead of playing dodgeball with music.
Yeah. Don't let it get chaotic.
Don't play dodgeball with music.
All right, everybody. And with that, we're going to come to the question of the day. And this one's a little bit tricky because a lot of you guys are in bands. A lot of you guys aren't in bands, right? But where are you not handing off the lead? Where are you letting your ego get in the way? Where are Where's a communication breakdown that's going on with you and being able to progress with your music, whether that be with the band or in your own journey, right? Like, where are you letting other people take too much control? Where are you taking too much control?
Yeah, and where can you balance that to make the overall picture better? Go to your journal, write it down.
Go to the comment section,
write it down.
Send someone a text
Declare.
that says, "Hey, I need you to back off them drums, buddy." And with that, as always, please like it, subscribe, share, tell somebody. Anything you guys can do to help grow the show would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you for being a friend.
And until next time.
Peace.